Is the only woman. Welcome back to Screen Scene. She was Tupac Shakur's wife. Keisha Morris-Shakur is the only woman who can ever make that claim. And now in her first television interview, Keisha speaks out about her life with the slain rapper. I sat down with Keisha and talked to her about the Tupac Shakur no one knew and about his premonition of death.
When we first decided to sit down and talk, that's the first thing that he always said, Keisha, I'm not going to live, you know, past a certain time, or, you know, I know I'm going to get shot up. He knew that. That was, you know, the one thing that he did know.
Do you think people had this misconception about Tupac and what he was?
He had two sides to him, yes. I'm not going to say he didn't. He was, but at the same time, he just, whatever he believed in, that's what he, you know, that was just he voiced his opinion for whatever it was that he believed in, but he also had this caring love inside that a lot of people didn't see, didn't know, you know, that, you know, he liked to give to a lot of people, he liked to help whoever it was that he could, but a lot of people didn't get a chance to see that.
We'll have the rest of this exclusive interview with Keisha Morris-Shakur tomorrow on Screen Scene. She'll tell us about her love for Tupac and what he was like as a husband. Watch for that tomorrow right here on Screen Scene. You don't want to miss it.
For BET Talk, I'm Sabrina Dames. Here's Tabitha Smiley.
Good evening and welcome to BET Talk. Joining me is that person who knew Tupac Shakur in a way that most of us didn't. His former wife, Keisha Morris-Shakur, joins us here in Washington. We are also joined tonight by the publisher and editor of that magazine you just saw, Sister to Sister magazine, Jamie Foster Brown. Good to see both of you. How are you?
Good to be here. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm glad you're here. I know you came back from Miami just to do our show tonight from the Impact Convention.
83 degrees down there. Came up here to
yeah, well, I'm glad you're here. Keisha, I'm glad you're here as well.
Thank you.
Let me start by asking just a very simple question, and that is, tell me what made Tupac different for you than he existed, of course, in the minds of other people. I suspect that your engagement, your involvement with him was on a much different level than most of us will ever have hoped to have known him. But tell me what your experience was like with him.
Well, he was, when he first approached me, he was very nice, very gentle, and a lot of people, you know, the perception of the, you know, that he had out there was a negative one, but he never at once, any time, gave me a negative perception of him at all. You
are on the cover, as we just mentioned, on the cover of the current issue of Sister to Sister magazine, which is out now.
Yes.
Tell me why you decided to talk now. I mean, you didn't have to talk.
No.
Why decide to talk, and why decide to talk in such a public way on the cover of a magazine?
To let everyone know that we had a relationship, that it was for real, that it wasn't just something that just happened because he was in jail or something like that. It was more to our relationship and, you know, our friendship than what everyone knew, you know.
Let me follow up on that, because I wanted to get there, and you're mentioning it makes it easier for me to bridge the gap. So I'm glad you mentioned it. Let me ask you how you respond to people who do in fact think that you consummated a relationship with Tupac simply because it was convenient for him at the time that he was in jail, and I think you know what I'm asking.
They don't have any, you know, any knowledge as to what our relationship was. Tupac and myself know exactly what relationship we had.
You think, Jamie, let me bring you in this conversation. Okay. You think that, first of all, let me ask you whether or not you believe what Keisha has to say. And secondly, let me ask you whether or not readers are going to get the sense when they see this particular article, if they haven't picked up the magazine already, if they're going to get the sense that she is, in fact, telling the truth about the fact that there was more to their relationship than trying to serve his needs, quote unquote, while he was incarcerated.
Well, I mean, Tupac, I met Keisha because I had to go up and interview Tupac when he was going to be locked down for something. Remember the woman who they said that he was harassing a jail security guard? So a lot of what she is saying, he actually said to me about her, and Keisha was living there. I mean, this is the worst town I have ever seen. This poor child up there by herself, basically. I mean, he brought some friends up there later to be with her, but Keisha literally moved up there, and you went to see him in the morning and stayed with him about 2:30, then you went shopping with him, bought him clothes every day. So, I mean, I saw that. He talked to me about that also, and then he said that I could still drop loads, but we don't want to consummate it here, and this is not the place. It was very holy for him his marriage with her.
So I think I'm hearing you say, and I don't want to be graphic or
Yes, you
or
do.
well, I do actually. I do. I think I'm hearing you say that while Keisha and Tupac were married, that there was in fact no conjugal relationship between the two of them while he was incarcerated.
A lot of people would think it was a marriage of convenience, and that, but they decided not to.
He didn't want to.
And tell me again, from in your words, why he didn't want to do that? Because that you know, a lot of folks watching right now don't understand what.
He didn't want people to think that that's why he married me. He didn't marry me just for that sole purpose or anything like that. He married me because he loved me.
Okay.
You know, we actually were engaged to be married way before he was even incarcerated.
Okay, let me ask you then, as one who loved Tupac and knew him in the way that you knew him, how do you respond? I shouldn't say respond. How does it make you feel when you see stories as the one that we just did at the top of the show with Sabrina, where you know, as a reporter, you have to mention, you know, the ups and the downs of his life.
Right.
He was, in fact, incarcerated, as you well know, for an offense against a woman, et cetera, et cetera. How does it make you feel when you see stories about Tupac that really show a side of him that was less than kind to African-American women, or just women in general?
Well, it bothers me, but, you know, I didn't know that part of him. You know, I wasn't never faced with any of those issues like that. I was with him through some very, you know, difficult times throughout his life, and I was basically his backbones. You know, he confided in me, and you know, he never treated me bad. So I can't, you know, go on what the media has portrayed him to be, because I didn't know that. Really.
Okay, let me ask you, forget relying on what the media has to say then. How does one in your position come to feel comfortable being in a situation and being in an intimate relationship with a man who has in fact been known, or at least certainly reported, to have been, as I said earlier, less than kind? I'm just using that for lack of a better phrase, but certainly less than kind to African-American women. How'd you get yourself in a mindset to be comfortable in a relationship with a man who had that kind of reputation to begin with?
Because he was not less than kind to me. He was a very caring individual. You know, he was very. Those instances were very few out of a whole lot of good. So I can't go by just, you know, a few instances that has happened, you know, to him throughout his life. But
he bought you the dog when he would leave her alone, and he felt bad about her being left alone a lot. He bought her, or he would buy her a Cocker Spaniel, bought her a Cocker Spaniel, and said, "I've got something for you." He bought you. He would buy her things, and he was in touch with her all the time. He was writing her, calling her, and the main thing is that he called her all the time. Keisha, you know, guess who I just met? Or Keisha, look who I just, you know. So she was like, well, he stayed at her house a lot also, even though he had a hotel, right? She was like his getaway place.
I got to take a break here. When we come back, we, of course, will start taking your phone calls across the country. For our guest tonight, Keisha Morris-Shakur, the former wife of the late Tupac Shakur, and Jamie Foster Brown, publisher and editor-in-chief of Sister to Sister magazine. Your calls in just a moment, so stay with us. Welcome back to BET Talk. I'm Tavis Smiley. We're joined tonight by the former wife of the late Tupac Shakur, Keisha Morris-Shakur, and also joined by Jamie Foster Brown of Sister to Sister magazine. I want to go to phone calls in just a second, but let me back up. There are a couple of questions. We got off to a running start. There are a couple of basic things I kind of wanted to cover before we get to the phone calls. Tell me very quickly how you and Tupac Shakur met. I'm interested to hear that story. And I'm also interested to hear how your family felt about your being involved in a relationship with Tupac.
Tupac and I met at a club in New York, and we spoke very briefly for about 5 minutes. And then we later on met about a month later, and he remembered who I was and remembered the conversation that we had, and he offered to take me out.
Okay. So what did your family think about your being involved, you're being married to him?
They were nervous,
yeah.
You know. He had sent me flowers from Hawaii, and actually my father was there to intercept those flowers, and he read the card and was all through the whole package, and he wanted to know, is this the rapper? Yeah. And I just told him mind his business. Yeah. And my mother, Tupac and her didn't get off to a good start, but they later on.
Things kind of warmed up a little bit.
Yeah, warmed up a bit, you know, because she was skeptical.
Let's take some phone calls. We'll go to California first to talk to Clayton. Clayton, thanks for calling. You're on BET Talk.
Good evening, ladies.
Hi.
Hi there. I read in this weekend's paper about the financial doings by Suge Knight, and I hope family members get some of that money. He was ripping them off and playing book games and all that. What do you think about, you think there's going to be a resolution where you actually get some of the money and get it out of his pocket?
Well, I'm not quite sure as to what the legalities is behind his estate and financial parts about it. No, I'm not seeking any compensation from him or anything like that.
When did the two of you get divorced anyway? When was the divorce?
The divorce was March of '96.
96.
Yeah.
Would that entitle? I guess you wouldn't be entitled to receive something from his estate anyway, since you were divorced before.
Oh, right.
Before he died.
Right, but I was, throughout our legal proceedings and stuff like that, I was never seeking anything from the beginning.
Okay. Let's go to Jason in New Jersey. Jason, thanks for calling. You're on BET Talk.
Hello, yes. How you doing? And I was wondering, as far as you know, was Tupac into the gangs deeply, as they say, and how they portrayed in like certain, the incident in the ballroom or whatever it was, where the jumping took place? How was all that portrayed? And do you know anything about all that?
No, I don't know anything about. I'm not familiar with any of that. I wasn't out there at the time, and
You weren't married to him at that time, were you?
I think he's talking about the fight.
The fight
Before.
right?
Well, no, we weren't married, but I saw him the day before.
I know you saw she was with him the day before.
I
A lot
saw
of
him the
people
day
don't know
before.
that.
Yeah,
She was with him. Yeah.
I was about to ask you, Jamie, speaking of, of Keisha, you, in this interview with Keisha in the current issue of the magazine, this is really just for you, a continuing interview and a long line of interviews you've had with Tupac and those around him. Right. I'm wondering whether or not you learned anything over the last year or so about this whole alleged East Coast, West Coast conflict.
No, I just didn't think that it existed. I mean, you got Coolio who's from the West Coast, going to the East Coast. You got Naughty by Nature going from the East Coast to the West Coast. It was just a couple of individuals within that. It's never been like an all-out war. It's never been like that. I mean, people, they go back and forth all the time.
I understand, Jamie, that Morris-Shakur, Tupac's mother, is now in the process of suing Death Row Records and Suge Knight.
Yes.
And I wanted to piggyback on the question that one of the callers asked about whether or not they're going to get, whether Keisha or others are going to get it. The family was going to get any of the money that Suge gets made off of Tupac. What do you know about this lawsuit and what may come out of it as it relates to the money?
There's so many. Well, she has a lawsuit against him. What is it, for $17 million, I think, right now. And I think that she's going to get something out of that. I mean, Interscope and Death Row are just having such bad publicity right now. It's not good. It's not good for business. They really need to settle this and just make it all, go away. Kind of. We don't know yet, but there's so many lawsuits. I mean, there's lawsuits against Tupac's estate, and then lawsuits that she has to go after Death Row. Because when Tupac came out, I think he was just ready to record everything, right? That's what he did. He just went in the studio almost 24 hours a day.
Because you're not involved in any of these lawsuits in any sort of way?
No.
Okay. Let's go to Virginia and talk to Jamal. Jamal, thanks for holding. You're on BET Talk.
Yes, I would like to ask Ms. Moore something pertaining to the speculations behind the faking of Tupac Shakur's death, his rumor behind the Machiavellian theory and everything else. Do you feel as though Tupac would have done something like that? Do you feel as though he would have faked his death because of maybe record sales or maybe enemies or any type of reasons why, do you feel as though he would do something like that and put his life away from the spotlight and everything? Do you feel as though he would have
Jamal, I think we get the gist of your question. We actually had Snoop on the show shortly after Tupac's death. We almost had to have Snoop on because there were so many people, as you well know, around the country who were buying into this rumor that Tupac was not dead. So with that being said, how do you respond to that?
No, Tupac would never. I don't think he would fake his death. It's the whole thing about all of these rumors that's out. No, Tupac would never do anything because he didn't consider himself to be a coward. So he would never do anything like that. More of
your calls, I should say, for Keisha and Jamie in just a second. You're watching BET Talk on Black Entertainment Television. We are back in just a moment, so stay with us. To BET Talk. Join us tomorrow night for BET Talk when our guest will be Essence Magazine Editor-in-Chief Susan Taylor, and her husband Kefra Burns will be here sharing knowledge they say can help shape your life. They have a new book out called Confirmation that they have written together. And again, tomorrow night, Susan Taylor and her husband Kefra Burns, our guest tomorrow night, live here at 11 p.m. Eastern on BET Talk. Hopefully you'll be here for our conversation with them tomorrow night. Tonight, though, we continue our conversation with Keisha Morris-Shakur, the former wife of the late Tupac Shakur, and Jamie Foster Brown, another editor-in-chief of another magazine, that one being, of course, Sister to Sister magazine. Before I go to Yolanda in Texas, Keisha, I wanted to ask, we just saw in that video a picture of Morris-Shakur, Tupac's mother. And I'm wondering whether or not you had, during the time you were married to Tupac, or now have, any kind of relationship with his mother?
Yes, at one time when we were married, we did, but as of now, no.
So have you spoken to her at all since the
No.
death? Not at all?
No.
Okay. Let's go to Yolanda in Texas. Yolanda, thanks for holding. You're on BET Talk.
Yes, I wanted to ask her, was he romantic?
Yes, yes. Very romantic. I used to come home all the time and there was flowers, or he would just make arrangements for us to go somewhere. I came home from work one day and there was a limo outside waiting for us to go to Atlantic City and stuff like that.
How did the criminal cases and the crime and the violence that Tupac, I shouldn't say was involved with, but certainly that surrounded his life, how did that affect? That had to have some, some pretty negative consequences on the relationship.
Actually, yes, it was hard during the times of his trials and stuff like that because, I saw what he was going through, and it was difficult because I couldn't help but so much. The only thing I can do is just assure him that I was supporting him.
We talked earlier, of course, one of the callers mentioned earlier this whole East Coast, West Coast conflict. I'm wondering whether or not, in your time with him, you ever heard him talk about, ever mention the conflict, the alleged conflict between Death Row and Bad Boy Entertainment, Tupac versus Biggie. You ever hear any conversation, ever a part of anything going on in his world about that conflict?
Yes, I've heard him mention. We discussed a lot of things, anything and everything, but I can't remember as to, verbatim what exactly he said.
Okay, let me fast forward then. You and Tupac were married while he was incarcerated. Stayed married for how long?
For
exactly.
A little under a year.
A little under a year, and then the marriage was annulled.
Right.
Why? Tell me what that was all about. You annulled it.
I annulled it.
Why did you do that?
Just for well, we were going through difficult times, but basically for tax reasons and lawsuits and it just wasn't working out.
Yeah, because
we said we were going to try it once he was released from jail. We were
Right.
definitely going to redo it again.
And that never happened.
No.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you that obviously there's a big difference between divorcing someone and having a marriage annulled.
That's what I was advised to do by my lawyers. They said that would be best for me. They were for my interest, and they said that as for divorce, they would rather me annul it.
Yeah. What do you say to people, Jamie, who will read your story in Sister Sister magazine and still not believe, respectfully, what Keisha's saying, that it really wasn't, she wasn't the one who pushed to have this thing annulled, that it was, in fact, Tupac doing it. Once he got released, there was no reason to remain married. It was time to get back to being a player. As a matter of fact, as I recall, in an interview he did when he was released, when he was asked why he got divorced, why the marriage ended, he said, I learned I'm a player and I'm going to be a player for life, et cetera, et cetera.
I didn't see that one.
No, I didn't see that one either. I would have got on him for that.
But Keisha talks there's a second interview that comes after this one where she talks about that he would call her up and she'll say, you hurt my feelings when you said that, and he said, he would apologize,
but
and they would
we still had a relationship.
Yeah, they still had a relationship.
Even after the marriage.
Even after we were married. So if that was the case, Tupac was the type of person, if he was through with you, that was it, But that wasn't the case with me. We were still friends up until the day.
And like we said, she was
before.
with him the day before he was shot. That she was with him in New
we were
York.
at the Hotel Nico.
At the Nico Hotel.
All right, many moments in just a second, more of your phone calls, so stay with us. We are back on the other side of this break. Being married to Tupac for that 1 year.
I learned about his world. I learned a lot from him, especially like the whole industry thing.
But what about your personal growth and personal development? Anything in that regard?
I know so much about him. I just want him to be remembered in a positive way because there was a lot of positive that outweighed all the negative stuff.
The big question after that experience with Tupac, you're going to get married again?
Yes.
Yes. Right. Not turning up to the concept of marriage.
No.
Thanks for coming by. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Jamie, good to see you as always. All right.